Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you for joining me here. I hope you're having a great day. Let's take another look here at Ethereum, see what's going on. This is actually a very, very good situation. From yesterday, when I looked at this here last, there was expectations for the price to bounce off its local point of control at 1800 and continue higher. Obviously, Bitcoin had a different agenda, but we can see this level didn't hold very well either. And what does that mean for us? Well, that reinforces that as a resistance, and we want to treat it as such. So moving forward, 1800 is tentatively the resistance for Ethereum, and what we're going to do is look at a few other things too to kind of see if that's either A, reinforced by that, or B, contradicts it. So go ahead and do me a favor, hit the like button, comment below. Deeply appreciate all the support I've been receiving here. Great comments, but low likes on the videos. And honestly, YouTube just loves the likes, so keep hitting the like buttons, keep doing that. We're seeing a slight increase now that I ask every single video, but do your due diligence, folks. I'll continue to do mine. Really appreciate you doing that for me. So let's take a look here. Liquidation is pretty heavy in both directions, but the key takeaway is we have a little bit more left at about the 1730 mark, just below the price action, with the secondary consideration at 1650. These are just basically areas of concentrations of where longs and shorts are accumulating the most. In other words, these aren't short positions at that level. That's where they get liquidated if the price gets there. And market makers really, really know how to manipulate the price and effectively push the price towards these levels. So it's important to recognize where they're at. Now, 1900 is a resistance, we know that, but it's also that area of concentration for liquidation to the upside. So if the price does continue to run, we break back above 1800, 1850, then I think 1900 would be a logical next target. But just note, liquidation accumulates at resistance and support ranges. It's not the other way around. All that being said, from a macro perspective, there isn't like a tremendous amount of incentive for the price to go lower. However, there's a lot of reasons why it could go lower just based on the simple sense that we've broken tentatively bearish, and I'll show you on the charts what I mean by that. Liquidation delta is another thing you want to pay attention to. Not a lot of people use it, and we can see we're right at about 4 billion in liquidation short delta. What does this tell us? Well, it tells us we have $4 billion more in liquidation that could occur for shorts, therefore reinforcing the fact that they're in control. All right. When the bears are selling, you don't just buy. Now, it's a different story altogether for spot bags or potentially, testing key level supports and such. But for right now, we've lost our support. We're on the wrong side of that, and Bitcoin's looking pretty shaky. What do you do in those situations? You don't necessarily take a long into that. Okay, so it's just it's driving against traffic. It's driving down a one-way street on accident, feeling like, oh crap, I'm doing something wrong. You should literally get that feeling when you take a long when everything else is going down. Okay. There's occasions where you need to do so, overextension, all that, but we're at like the beginning stage of this reversal or, trending towards that. And I think there's a decent chance we continue lower. Granted, we can look at the charts here in a minute and find out it's not a good call to short or take a long, but for the most part, I'm leaning more towards shorting altcoins than I am taking a long at this exact moment, all right? We have a short open for SUI and Bitcoin, both currently, one's at break even, one's in profit, and it's just kind of, it's just basically the way the market's moving right now. Open interest is all over the place, by the way. If we look at heavy concentrations, we can see right here at about 1770. So there's a lot of buying pressure there. There's also a lot of buying pressure between 1800 and 1820. So we travel up to this 1800 range. I think there's a solid chance we'll see some resistance in that area. Okay. Having said that, let's take a look at the daily time frame, work our way down. And just kind of recognize here too that this coin, I've talked highly of this coin here recently, which feels kind of weird because Ethereum is just kind of, it blows in the overall sense of being a good coin. Is the best way to describe it. In other words, we've shorted this coin like 3 times last month, if I recall correctly, all with easy profits. Just as soon as Bitcoin comes up, you just short Ethereum, and it was like, it was easy money. That dynamic may have shifted here, but we can see we're pretty well range bound with a lot of candle wicks up and candle wicks down between 1730 and about 1875. So we got the upper and lower range there. The point of control here, though, is 1805. If we kind of zoom out a little bit, ever since we've been in this sub 2000 category, we've seen the most amount of volume at 1800. What does that tell us? That tells us there's a lot of exit liquidity if the price comes up to that level. Because right now, people that bought in at 1800 or higher, they're going to want to sell at that level because they are underwater on their trades right now. Okay. So that reinforces resistance. Daily time frame, we recognize too, we're over 50 on the RSI, which is generally construed as a positive. But we're literally testing it right now. Money flow index pulling back. We're under our moving average. MACD is almost diverging, hasn't fully diverged yet. And then we got stochastic swinging down. So the majority of those are unfavorable. Okay. Now, when we look at the 4-hour time frame, we can recognize we're under both moving averages here, the 20 and the 50. That's a lot of confluence. I'm emphasizing resistance. Okay, so as tempting as it is to buy this dip, it's not necessarily the most advantageous. We've also got a rising type of wedge pattern here, and these are generally construed as bearish. In other words, it would derive from the downside. Therefore, the likelihood of breaking out to the other way is higher. Okay, so this is just a crude pattern. I literally just drew it on the charts out of nowhere. So don't hold yourself to this and be like, oh, Crypto Cash says there's a bearish pattern here. I'm going to take a short because of it. No, if this bearish pattern is reinforced with other bearish qualities, then it's a good idea. Okay, people seem to just kind of get like all sorts of like happy with chart patterns and think that that's just like the only way that you trade. And truth is, it's a small part of trading, but it does help emphasize and reiterate that you're on the right track if you're taking a trade in that same direction. All right, all that being said, let's take a look quickly at Bitcoin's chart and recognize kind of where we're at here. Just give some perspective. We can see Bitcoin is working its way into its power of 3 to the downside, a lot of divergence under its point of control. When we look at that, we compare that with Ethereum. Very similar price structure here. We got our little manipulative waves here, and decent chance we come down a bit lower here based on that lower range. Now, I'm only speculating that is the case based on the simple fact that we have divergences here. We're under our moving averages. We're under our point of control. It's responding consistent with Bitcoin, not perfect, but it is consistent there. And the premise of what you need to understand here is analyzing Bitcoin. I do it every single day, multiple times a day. When I looked at Bitcoin this morning, not 2 hours ago, Bitcoin has a lot of divergences, a lot of reasons why it's going to continue lower. I'm not just saying that because we have a short position open in profit. I'm saying that because that's literally what the charts are telling us, and there's a lot of reasons for it. If you're not familiar with that, check out our Twitter, Telegram, and Discord, and you'll see. But the whole point of me mentioning that is that most alts are performing poorly versus Bitcoin, and this is also no difference, okay? So I think there's a distinct probability we come lower. Now, if we come lower, how much further down are we going to go? We got a fair value gap as low as about 1710. That's a better case scenario. I don't think we're going to see like a monumental run to the 1600s unless Bitcoin really takes off towards the 90K range. So I don't think there's a tremendous amount of meat left on the bone, but there are some areas here to consider. I'll have to draw out some new fib levels here for you. I'll post this once more on our Twitter, Telegram, and Discord so you can see it. But based on local support, 1750 seems to be that consistent number. But below that, I think low 1700 makes a lot of sense. 1705, 1710, we got our fair value gaps and our points control there. I also haven't looked at Ethereum futures here. We got a CME gap from before. Just kind of reiterate this here. We have a CME gap at 1715 to 1762 that still is yet to be filled. So that is concurrent in a lot of ways with 92,000 for Bitcoin. And what do you know? That all kind of speaks the same language. Further downside makes more sense than further upside. Okay, and if you're not familiar, Bitcoin does have a CME gap above the price too. It just makes more sense for it to fill this lower gap first because we're closer. That's how it works. Okay, those are my 2 cents. What are your 2 cents? Why don't you comment below? Let me know what you're thinking here. We'll look forward to seeing if we're right or wrong here in the near future. But the key takeaway, folks, is it's not about being right or wrong. It's about using proper risk tolerance and making sure that you're taking good trades. So truth is right now, taking a long is just highly risky. But we're right here in this support range, roughly, so there's a decent chance we pivot and bounce, but it's all based on Bitcoin going higher. Do you really want to take those odds? Because everything we've seen here so far is statistically more favorable to go down. Why trade against that? It doesn't make a ton of sense. All right, so anyways, we'll go ahead and see where this ends up. I'll post a playout chart on our Twitter, Telegram, and Discord, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video. Hope you all have a good rest of the day. Thanks again so much for your time. We'll see you soon.